The sepia-toned photograph arrived at the Smithsonian's Archives of American History on a crisp October morning in 2023, tucked inside a weathered manila envelope. Dr. Sarah Chen, the institution's lead photograph historian, barely glanced at it initially. Another family portrait from the early 1900s, she assumed. Donations like these arrived weekly from descendants clearing out attics and estate sales, but something made her pause. The photograph showed a typical American family gathering from 1910, staged in what appeared to be a modest but well-appointed parlor. 11 people in their Sunday best posed around an ornate dining table laden with the remnants of what must have been a substantial meal. The patriarch, a distinguished man with a carefully waxed mustache, sat at the head of the table, his hand resting protectively on the shoulder of a young boy. Women in high-necked blouses and men in pressed suits filled the frame, their faces bearing the serious expressions common to photographs of that era. What caught Sarah's attention wasn't the people, it was something on the table itself. Among the scattered dishes, crystal glasses, and linen napkins, there sat an object that seemed utterly out of place for a dinner setting. At first glance, it appeared to be some sort of mechanical device, but as Sarah adjusted her magnifying glass and leaned closer, her breath caught in her throat. The object was cylindrical, made of polished brass and mahogany, with intricate mechanical components visible through glass panels. It had the unmistakable appearance of an experimental camera or optical device, but its design was unlike anything she had seen from the standard camera manufacturers of 1910. Most puzzling of all, it bore what appeared to be Edison's distinctive design elements, the kind of experimental apparatus that emerged from his Menlo Park laboratory. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her high-resolution scanner. She had examined thousands of historical photographs, but something about this particular device made her heart race. The accompanying letter, written in shaky handwriting, simply stated, "Found this in my great-grandmother's things." She always said there was something special about this family dinner, but she never explained what. The strange camera-like device was destroyed in a house fire in 1923, but she kept this photograph. Maybe you can figure out what it was. Margaret Foster, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. As the scanner hummed to life, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to uncover a piece of forgotten photographic history. The device appeared to be far more sophisticated than standard cameras of the era, suggesting it might have been one of Edison's experimental prototypes that had somehow found its way to a family dinner in Iowa. She saved the high-resolution file and immediately began her research, knowing that this photograph was about to consume her professional life. Something told her that the Foster family's 1910 gathering held secrets about early photographic innovation that had been waiting over a century to be revealed. Sarah's first instinct was to authenticate the photograph itself. Over her 15-year career, she had encountered numerous fakes, modern images aged artificially or digital manipulations designed to fool historians. But as she examined the Foster family portrait under specialized lighting and magnification, every detail suggested authenticity. The paper bore the distinctive characteristics of early 20th century photographic stock. The chemical composition of the developing agents matched perfectly with techniques used between 1908 and 1912. Even the way light played across the subjects' faces showed the telltale signs of the long exposure times required by cameras of that era. Most convincingly, tiny imperfections in the glass plate negative, barely visible scratches and dust specks, appeared in exactly the places one would expect after more than a century of storage. Yet the mysterious camera device remained an enigma. Sarah contacted Dr. James Morrison, a colleague at MIT who specialized in the history of American photography and Edison's innovations. When she sent him a cropped image of just the device, his response came within an hour. "Sarah, this looks like one of Edison's experimental camera prototypes, but I can't place it in any of his documented projects. The design elements suggest it might have been a kinetic photography experiment, possibly related to his work on motion pictures. Are you sure about your dating?" Frustrated but determined, Sarah decided to trace the photograph's provenance. The letter from Margaret Foster included a return address, and after a brief phone conversation, Sarah found herself driving to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, on a cold November weekend. Margaret Foster was a retired schoolteacher in her 70s, living in a well-maintained Victorian home not far from the Cedar River. She welcomed Sarah with homemade coffee and an eagerness to finally understand her family's mysterious heirloom. "My great-grandmother was Emma Foster," Margaret explained, settling into a well-worn armchair surrounded by family photographs spanning multiple generations. She was always secretive about that particular dinner party, said it was the most important night of her life, but she never explained why. The photograph was displayed prominently in her parlor for decades, but she would change the subject whenever anyone asked about the strange device on the table. Margaret led Sarah to a cedar chest that contained Emma's personal effects. Among the items were several letters, a few pieces of jewelry, and a small leather journal with entries dating from 1908 to 1915. Sarah's pulse quickened as she opened to the entry dated November 15, 1910. Exactly one day after the photograph's inscription indicated it was taken. The entry was brief but intriguing. Last night changed everything about how we see the world. The demonstration was beyond anything we could have imagined. We have sworn to secrecy, but I pray history will understand the importance of what we witnessed. The journal entries surrounding November 14, 1910, painted a picture of a family preparing for something extraordinary. Emma Foster wrote about an unusual visitor expected for dinner, preparations that seemed far more elaborate than a typical family gathering, and repeated mentions of the remarkable demonstration we are to witness. Sarah photographed each relevant page with Margaret's permission, her excitement growing with each cryptic reference. Emma's handwriting became increasingly elaborate in the days following the dinner, as if she were struggling to comprehend something remarkable she had experienced. 3 entries particularly stood out. November 10, 1910. Harold says the gentleman from Edison's laboratory will arrive Tuesday evening with his experimental apparatus. We must be ready to document this historic moment. November 13, 1910. Final preparations complete. I pray we are worthy witnesses to such innovation. The camera device must be photographed for posterity, as requested. November 16, 1910. 2 days have passed, and I can barely comprehend what we witnessed. The moving pictures captured in a single device. It was like watching life itself preserved in glass and metal. The future of photography will never be the same. Margaret listened intently as Sarah read the entries aloud. I remember grandmother mentioning Harold, she said thoughtfully. He was Emma's husband, my great-grandfather. He worked for the railroad, but grandmother always hinted that he had connections with inventors and electrical engineers. A quick search through the Cedar Rapids Historical Society records revealed that Harold Foster had indeed worked for the Chicago and Northwestern Railway. But more interestingly, he had also been involved with several local inventors and entrepreneurs who were experimenting with electrical devices. His name appeared on correspondence with various inventors between 1905 and 1912, suggesting he was far from a simple railroad employee. Sarah's investigation led her to the basement of the Historical Society, where she discovered a collection of Harold Foster's papers that had been donated decades earlier but never fully cataloged. Among them were correspondence with inventors, sketches of electrical devices, and, most remarkably, a letter dated November 20th, 1910, from someone identified only as WKLD. The letter was brief but electrifying. Harold, I trust you and your family understand the significance of what you witnessed. The kinetic photography device represents years of experimental work that must remain confidential until the proper patents are secured. Your discretion ensures that this innovation will reach the world at the appropriate time. The photograph serves as the only record of our successful demonstration. WKLD. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the century-old correspondence. Someone had deliberately brought an experimental camera device to the Foster family dinner, demonstrated its revolutionary capabilities, and ensured the moment was photographed for historical record. The question was, who was WKLD, and what exactly had the Foster family witnessed that November evening? The mystery was deepening, and Sarah realized she was uncovering not just a family secret, but potentially a missing piece of early cinema and photography history. Determined to identify the mysterious WKLD, Sarah dove deeper into early 20th century records. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Harold Foster's employment records with the Chicago and Northwestern Railway. Among his personnel files was a reference to special assignments that took him to various locations throughout the Midwest, often to consult with private inventors and experimental workshops specializing in electrical innovations. One name appeared repeatedly in Harold's travel vouchers from 1910, frequent trips to Menlo Park, New Jersey, the location of Thomas Edison's famous invention laboratory. But Edison's initials were TAE, not WKLD. Further research revealed that Edison's laboratory employed dozens of inventors, engineers, and experimenters during this period. Sarah combed through employment records and found several individuals with the initials WKLD who worked there during the 1908-1912 period. One name stood out: William Kennelly Laurie Dixon, a brilliant inventor who had been instrumental in developing Edison's motion picture technology. Dixon's file revealed a fascinating career trajectory. Born in France in 1860, he had worked closely with Edison on the development of the kinetoscope and was credited with creating some of the first motion pictures in American history. However, by 1910, he had left Edison's employ and was working independently on advanced photographic and cinematographic devices. Most intriguingly, Dixon's personal correspondence found in Edison's archives revealed that he had been developing what he called compact kinetic photography devices, portable cameras capable of capturing multiple sequential images in a single apparatus, essentially creating moving pictures without the bulky equipment typically required. Sarah contacted Dr. Patricia Williams, a historian specializing in Edison's laboratory and early cinema technology, who agreed to examine Dixon's file more closely. Within days, Dr. Williams called back with startling information. Dixon wasn't just working on standard motion pictures, she explained excitedly. According to some internal memos I found in Edison's personal archives, he was developing what he called domestic kinetic devices, cameras designed for home use that could capture both still photographs and moving images in a single compact unit. This was decades ahead of anything that would be commercially available. More shocking still, Dr. Williams had discovered a photograph in Edison's personal collection, a picture of Dixon himself working with a device that matched the object in the Foster family photograph almost exactly. The caption, in Edison's handwriting, read, "WKLD with experimental domestic kinetic camera, November 1910. William Dixon had indeed been present at that November 14, 1910 dinner party, and he had brought one of his revolutionary experimental cameras to demonstrate its capabilities to the Foster family. But why had he chosen them for this historic demonstration? And what had happened to this groundbreaking technology? The mystery was becoming more complex, but Sarah felt she was getting closer to understanding why a cutting-edge photographic device had appeared in a seemingly ordinary family photograph over a century ago. Armed with Dixon's identity, Sarah reached out to Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a film historian at the University of Southern California, who specialized in early motion picture technology. When Sarah explained her discovery and sent high-resolution images of the mysterious device, Dr. Rodriguez's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Rodriguez said during their video call. "The device in your photograph appears to be a prototype of what Dixon called a universal photographic apparatus, a camera that could capture both still photographs and sequential motion images in a single compact unit. This technology wouldn't become commercially viable until the 1920s. And even then it was much larger and more cumbersome." Dr. Rodriguez explained that Dixon's approach represented a revolutionary leap in photographic engineering. Standard motion picture cameras of 1910 were enormous, requiring special studios and professional operators. What Dixon appears to have created was the ancestor of modern home movie cameras, portable, user-friendly, and capable of multiple functions. Sarah's investigation took her back to Edison's archives, where Dr. Williams had uncovered additional materials related to Dixon's independent work after leaving Edison's employ. Among them was a technical diagram that matched the device in the photograph almost exactly. The diagram was labeled Universal Photographic Apparatus, Domestic Model, and included notes in Dixon's handwriting describing its function as a revolutionary tool for preserving family memories in both static and kinetic form. The implications were significant for the history of photography and cinema. Dixon had apparently created a device that combined still photography with motion pictures in a way that wouldn't be achieved commercially for another decade. This would explain why the device appeared so advanced in the 1910 photograph. It represented technology that was genuinely ahead of its time. But the story took an even more remarkable turn when Sarah discovered Dixon's personal journal, preserved in the Library of Congress's manuscript collection. The entries from November 1910 revealed the full scope of his innovation. November 12, 1910. Final adjustments to the universal apparatus complete. The Foster demonstration will prove that families can document their lives with both still and moving images using a single device. This represents the future of domestic photography, November 14, 1910. Remarkable success. The device performed flawlessly, capturing both formal portraits and kinetic sequences of the family at dinner. The expressions of wonder on their faces as they watched the playback will remain with me forever. November 15, 1910. The demonstration has concluded successfully. Though I must maintain confidentiality regarding the technical specifications, I am convinced this technology will transform how families preserve their memories. The Foster family has witnessed the birth of truly accessible cinema. Dixon's final entry was particularly revealing. I have left detailed photographs of the device with the Foster family as documentation of this historic demonstration. Future historians will recognize this moment as pivotal in the democratization of moving pictures. Sarah realized she was holding evidence of one of the most significant advances in early 20th century photography and cinema technology, a breakthrough that had been tested in the intimate setting of an Iowa family's dining room over a century ago. The revelation that Dixon had chosen the Foster family for his groundbreaking demonstration raised new questions. Why had he selected them specifically, and what exactly had they witnessed during that remarkable November evening? Sarah's investigation led her back to Harold Foster's background, and what she discovered painted a picture of a man with surprising connections to the emerging world of electrical innovation. Through Edison's correspondence files, she learned that Harold had been recommended to Dixon specifically for his discretion and his family's genuine enthusiasm for new technologies. Emma Foster's journal provided crucial details about what had transpired during the demonstration. November 15, 1910. Mr. Dixon's apparatus was beyond anything we could have imagined. First, he used it to photograph our family in the traditional manner. But then, oh, the wonder. He demonstrated how the same device could capture us in motion. We watched ourselves moving and speaking, preserved as if by magic in his remarkable machine. The genius of Dixon's innovation became clearer through Emma's detailed descriptions. He had created not just a camera, but a complete domestic entertainment system that could both create and display moving images. The device combined the photographic technology of the era with revolutionary mechanical improvements that made motion pictures accessible to ordinary families. Margaret Foster led Sarah to her grandmother's collection of family documents, where they discovered something extraordinary. Several additional photographs from that same evening, showing the Foster family gathered around Dixon's device as he demonstrated its capabilities. In one image, family members leaned forward in fascination as Dixon operated the camera. In another, they appeared to be watching a playback of moving images on a small viewing screen built into the device. Grandmother always said that was the night they saw themselves come alive in pictures, Margaret explained. I thought it was just a poetic way of describing photography, but now I understand she meant it literally. Dr. Rodriguez arrived from California to examine the additional photographs and Margaret's collection of family documents. Her analysis confirmed their suspicions. The images showed what appeared to be the first recorded domestic demonstration of portable motion picture technology. The viewing screen built into Dixon's device was revolutionary, Dr. Rodriguez explained as she studied the photographs. This wasn't just about creating moving pictures. It was about immediate playback, allowing families to watch themselves just moments after being filmed. This level of user-friendly design wouldn't appear in commercial products for years. As they carefully documented the additional photographs, Sarah realized they were witnessing the culmination of one man's vision to bring the magic of cinema into American homes. Dixon hadn't just invented advanced technology. He had demonstrated how that technology could transform the way families preserved and shared their memories. The Foster family had been chosen not because they were special, but precisely because they were ordinary, representing the everyday American families who would eventually embrace motion pictures as part of their daily lives. Dixon's demonstration proved that revolutionary technology could be made accessible and meaningful to regular people, foreshadowing the democratization of film that would define the coming decades. Dr. Rodriguez's team spent several days analyzing the additional Foster family photographs and comparing them with known examples of early motion picture equipment. What they discovered painted a picture of technological innovation that was decades ahead of its time. Dixon's universal photographic apparatus incorporated engineering solutions that wouldn't become standard until the 1920s, Dr. Rodriguez explained to Sarah as they reviewed their findings. The combination of still and motion photography in a single portable device, the integrated viewing screen, the user-friendly controls, these features represent a remarkable leap forward from anything else available in 1910. The most significant discovery came when they found technical specifications hidden within Harold Foster's papers. Dixon had apparently left detailed drawings and mechanical explanations with the Foster family, documenting his invention for posterity. The specifications revealed sophisticated gear systems, advanced lens configurations, and mechanical timing devices that demonstrated genuine engineering brilliance. This could have changed the entire trajectory of film and photography development, Dr. Rodriguez announced. If Dixon had been able to commercialize this technology, home movies might have become common 15 years earlier than they actually did. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and melancholy as she contemplated the implications. They weren't just examining a successful invention, they were looking at a road not taken, a technological path that might have transformed American culture in ways they could only imagine. The question remained, why hadn't Dixon's innovation reached the market? Emma Foster's later journal entries provided crucial clues. December 3, 1910, received sad news that Mr. Dixon's workshop suffered a fire. His experimental apparatus and all his technical documentation were destroyed. He writes that he must begin again from the beginning, but the financial burden may prove too great. January 15, 1911. Mr. Dixon has decided to return to standard motion picture work with larger studios. He says the domestic market is not yet ready for his innovations, and the cost of rebuilding his experimental equipment is prohibitive. Historical records confirmed Emma's account. Dixon's independent workshop in West Orange, New Jersey, had indeed suffered a devastating fire in late November 1910, just days after his successful demonstration with the Foster family. The fire destroyed not only his prototype devices, but also years of research and development work. Without the resources to rebuild his experimental equipment, Dixon had been forced to abandon his domestic photography innovations and return to conventional motion picture work. The universal photographic apparatus remained a one-of-a-kind achievement, demonstrated once to an Iowa family and then lost to history. It's one of technology's great tragedies, Dr. Rodriguez reflected. Dixon had solved problems that the industry wouldn't address again for years, but circumstances prevented his solutions from reaching the world. The Foster family witnessed something that was truly ahead of its time, and then watched it disappear. Sarah realized that the Foster family photograph documented more than just an early technical demonstration. It preserved evidence of a pivotal moment when the future of domestic photography and cinema hung in the balance, only to be derailed by circumstance and misfortune. News of Dixon's lost innovation spread throughout the academic community, generating intense interest among film historians, technology researchers, and photography enthusiasts. Sarah found herself at the center of discussions about how different the development of home entertainment might have been if Dixon's universal photographic apparatus had reached commercial production. The implications extended beyond mere technological curiosity. Dixon's achievement represented a fundamental shift in thinking about who could create and enjoy moving pictures. While the film industry of 1910 was dominated by professional studios and specialized equipment, Dixon had envisioned a world where every family could be both creators and consumers of cinema. Dr. Rodriguez organized a special symposium at USC, bringing together experts in early cinema, photographic technology, and industrial history. The Foster family photograph and Emma's journal entries became the centerpiece of presentations exploring how technological innovation often develops along unexpected paths. Margaret Foster, now recognized as the keeper of one of photography's most significant lost chapters, found herself invited to speak at universities and museums across the country. Great-grandmother Emma always said that evening changed how she saw the world, Margaret told audiences. She used to say that after seeing herself moving in the pictures, she understood that time itself could be captured and preserved. The Foster family's role in preserving this piece of history became a symbol of how ordinary people often serve as unintentional guardians of extraordinary innovations. Their careful preservation of photographs, documents, and family stories had ensured that Dixon's achievement wouldn't be entirely lost to history. Sarah worked with the Smithsonian to create a comprehensive exhibition exploring Dixon's innovation and its place in the broader story of American technological development. The display combined the original Foster family photographs with historical context about early cinema, interactive demonstrations of 1910-era photography techniques, and speculation about how different entertainment history might have been. The exhibition, titled "The Road Not Taken: Dixon's Domestic Cinema Revolution," attracted visitors from around the world. Families stood before the Foster photographs, imagining how their own ancestors might have reacted to witnessing moving pictures in their own homes decades before such technology became widely available. But perhaps the most significant impact was on contemporary inventors and engineers. Dixon's story inspired a new appreciation for the role of individual innovation in technological progress. His willingness to envision radical departures from existing approaches, combined with his focus on making advanced technology accessible to ordinary people, resonated with modern developers working on emerging technologies. The Foster family story also highlighted the importance of preserving family histories and artifacts. Museums reported increased donations of family photographs and documents as people became more aware that seemingly ordinary items might contain extraordinary stories. As Sarah reflected on the journey from her initial puzzlement over an unusual object in an old photograph to the recognition of a lost chapter in American innovation, she marveled at how one family's careful preservation of memories had rescued a pioneering inventor from historical obscurity. 6 months after the discovery made national headlines in photography and film journals, Sarah found herself back in Cedar Rapids, sitting in Margaret Foster's parlor and reflecting on the remarkable chain of events that had brought recognition to W.K.L. Dixon's forgotten achievement. The impact of their discovery extended far beyond academic circles. The story of Dixon's universal photographic apparatus had captured public imagination, inspiring documentaries, magazine articles, and even a planned biographical film about the inventor's life and work. Margaret had embraced her role as keeper of her family's remarkable story, but she remained grounded in the human elements that made the discovery meaningful. "I keep thinking about that November evening," she mused, gazing at the original photograph that had started everything. Imagine how magical it must have been for them, seeing moving pictures for the first time, right here in their own parlor. Sarah had spent months working with technology historians to analyze every detail of Dixon's innovation. They had identified specific engineering advances that wouldn't appear in commercial products for years, mapped the influence of his techniques on later developments, and even located several patents from the 1915 to 1925 period that appeared to have been influenced by similar approaches to domestic photography. Dixon's work wasn't completely lost, Sarah explained to Margaret during their latest meeting. "We've found evidence that some of his innovations were independently rediscovered by other inventors throughout the 1910s and 1920s. His vision of accessible home cinema was so compelling that multiple people arrived at similar solutions. The discovery had also prompted new research into other potentially overlooked innovations from the early 20th century. Sarah's methodology, combining family photograph analysis with genealogical research and technological history, had inspired other historians to examine their own collections for evidence of forgotten achievements. Dr. Rodriguez had established the Dixon Archive at USC, dedicated to documenting early experiments in domestic photography and cinema. William Dixon proved that revolutionary ideas often emerge from individual vision rather than corporate research, she explained during the archive's dedication ceremony. His story reminds us to look beyond the obvious sources when studying technological development. The Foster family's experience had also highlighted the crucial role that ordinary families play in preserving technological history. Their century-long care of photographs, documents, and family stories had ensured that future generations could understand and appreciate pioneering achievements that might otherwise have been lost. Sarah realized that her discovery represented more than just historical detective work. It was a reminder that innovation often happens in unexpected places, preserved by people who may not fully understand its significance, but recognize its importance nonetheless. As she prepared to leave Cedar Rapids, Sarah knew that somewhere in America's family collections, other forgotten achievements were waiting to be rediscovered. The Foster family photograph had taught her that the most extraordinary stories often hide in the most ordinary places, patiently waiting for someone to look closely enough to see their true significance. 1 year after her initial discovery, Sarah stood before a packed auditorium at the International Photography and Cinema History Conference, delivering the keynote address about the intersection of family history and technological innovation. The field of domestic technology archaeology, born from her examination of a single family photograph, now included researchers from institutions worldwide. William Dixon's genius wasn't just in creating technology that was ahead of its time, Sarah told the assembled historians, curators, and technology experts. His true achievement was understanding that innovation must serve human needs. that the most sophisticated technology means nothing unless it enhances people's lives in meaningful ways. The Foster family photograph had become one of the most studied images in early photography history, not because of its artistic merit, but because of what it revealed about the relationship between innovation and everyday life. Visitors to the Smithsonian exhibition often spent long minutes studying the faces of the Foster family, trying to imagine their wonder at experiencing moving pictures for the first time. Dr. Rodriguez's research had confirmed that Dixon's approach to domestic cinema had indeed influenced later developments, even though his specific innovations had been lost. The ideas he demonstrated that night in Iowa, accessible technology, user-friendly design, integrated entertainment systems, became the foundation principles for the entire home entertainment industry, she noted in her recent publication about early cinema development. Margaret Foster had become a sought-after speaker on the importance of preserving family artifacts and stories. She traveled extensively, encouraging people to examine their inherited photographs more carefully and to document the stories their older relatives shared about seemingly ordinary objects and events. Emma Foster kept that photograph and those documents for over 60 years, Margaret often told audiences. She probably never imagined that her careful preservation of family memories would contribute to our understanding of technological history, but that's exactly what happened. Ordinary care for family heritage preserved extraordinary innovation. The scientific and cultural implications continued to unfold. Dixon's demonstration had provided insights into early 20th century approaches to invention, the relationship between individual innovators and emerging industries, and the ways that technological possibilities often outpace market readiness. Sarah's own career had been transformed by the discovery. She now directed the newly established Center for Family-Based Historical Research, training investigators to recognize the historical significance that might be hidden in ordinary family collections. But perhaps the most profound impact was philosophical. Dixon's story had shown that innovation often develops along unexpected paths, that breakthrough achievements sometimes emerge from individual vision rather than institutional research, and that the most important technological developments are those that bring new possibilities into ordinary people's lives. As Sarah concluded her address, she displayed the original Foster family photograph one final time. "This image teaches us that wonder and innovation surround us constantly," she said. "In every family photograph, every inherited artifact, every story passed down through generations, there may be evidence of human creativity and achievement waiting to be recognized. William Dixon's greatest legacy isn't just his technological innovation. It's his reminder that the future often begins in the most ordinary places, with ordinary people who dare to imagine extraordinary possibilities." The applause that filled the auditorium seemed to echo across time itself, connecting that moment to Dixon's 1910 demonstration, to the Foster family's century of preservation, and to future discoveries yet to be made. In family collections around the world, other stories of forgotten innovation might be waiting, preserved by people who understood that some things are worth keeping, even when their full significance remains hidden. Sarah smiled, knowing that the Foster family's careful guardianship had rescued not just one inventor's achievement from obscurity, but had inspired a new appreciation for the extraordinary innovations that often hide in the most ordinary places, waiting patiently to remind us that human creativity knows no boundaries of time or circumstance.